Lesson 8.10 is graphing factored polynomials from their roots. And so what you're going to see is these equations are in factored form. We're going to have to include correct signs. We'll talk about what that means. X-intercepts, which are the roots, and then the y-intercept as well. So what Delta Math will have is you plotting the points for the roots, the x-intercepts, and the y-intercept. And so since it's in factored form, remember our factors come from setting y equal to 0 and finding the x values that make that true, make them equal 0. So this one be when x is -1. This has a multiplicity of 2, so it's going to make it bounce at +3. So I'll put bounce. When it's only a multiplicity of 1, then it's just going to cross through. And then this one, you would add the 10 over, divide by 2. So at x equals 5, there's only a multiplicity of 1 here. It's just going to cross through. So I'm going to plot those, -1, 3, 5. Okay, and then the y-intercept, and we're to find a y-intercept that puts it on the y-axis where there's going to be an x value of 0. So y will equal 0 plus 1 times 0 minus 3 squared times 2 times 0 minus 10. That would be 1. That would be -3 squared. 2 times 0 is 0 minus 10 is -10. -3 squared is 9 times 1 doesn't do anything, times -10 is -90. Should be right there. Then once you do that, it's going to have you sketch the graph, and then it'll kind of smooth out the lines for you. Now, what I really should be teaching you is figuring out, okay, in this region, is the y value is going to be positive or negative. But I'm going to show you the shortcut using what we've learned from the last lesson with end behavior. So if I were to multiply all this out, which would not be fun, right? I'd have to square this, take it times this, take it times this. That would take forever. What I'm thinking, though, is I'm going to have an x times an x times a 2x. Actually, an x squared, sorry. X times an x squared times a 2x. I'm just worried about the x's because that's going to get me the highest degree term. So I'll have x times an x squared times a 2x, which would get me 2x to the 2, 3, 4th power. If this were my highest power term, based on the degree or the power being even, that means both ends are going to be the same direction, and this is this is a positive number in front, so they're both going to end up going up. Okay? And so then use your knowledge about the zeros. Through -1, it's going to cross through. So I'm going to start up. I'm going to cross. I should go through my y-intercept somewhere. And then I'm going to bounce at 3. So touch it and then bounce back into the negative y values. Turn directions, and then it's going to cross through 5 and end up. It kind of makes a W. That's the fastest way to do it. All right, number 2. Let's try to go a little faster. Find your zeros. This would be -6. Don't worry about the negative in front because it doesn't have an x with it. We've got -4, and we've got +1. Well, what's going to happen at each of those? At the -6, it's just going to cross. Our multiplicity is 2 at the -4, so it's going to bounce. And our multiplicity is 2 at 1, so it's also going to bounce. Okay, find the y-intercept. That means plug in x is 0. Don't forget about your negative in front. So it's going to be 0 plus 6, which is 6. 0 plus 4, which is 4, squared. 0 minus 1, which is -1, squared. It's actually 1. 16 times 6 is 96 times 1 is 96 times a negative. So we get -96. So that would be somewhere down in here. Okay, so then I got to figure out what's the highest degree term doing. I've got a negative in front. That's going to be important. I've got an x times an x squared times an x squared. So I'm going to have my negative times x squared times x squared. So that would be a negative x to the 2 4 5th power. So you're really just trying to figure out how many x's are getting multiplied together all together. So then it's an odd power. It's a negative leading coefficient. So one ends up, one ends down. It's just figuring out which one's which. Since we have a negative in front, it's going to end up down. So it's got to start from up. Okay, let's plot our zeros at -6, -4, and 1. So I'm going to start from up here. I cross through the -6. It doesn't matter how low you go. I'm going to turn directions. I'm going to bounce off my -4. I'm going to go ahead and go through my y-intercept and change directions. And I also bounce off a 1. And I end up down. So see how I'm like going downhill the whole time? And that's it.